And I sort of sense that part of it is about breaking the will of Ukrainians, making them turn on their government and say, just make it stop. And I think that sort of semi-defeatist sentiment is there, but I still think it's relatively small. I think most Ukrainian soldiers I talk to have been saying since 2022 that we're fighting for our land and our country and our culture and our people and our families and so on. And as one of them said to me last week, we don't have a choice. We have no other option than to keep going. Yeah. So I suppose the short answer is the war will carry on.
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of On the Edge. Our special guest is Guardian journalist Luke Harding, and he is also an award-winning, best-selling author of books that range in topics from WikiLeaks to the rise of Russia's mafia state and how it uses informational warfare. He's got a book about Moscow's interference in the 2016 U.S. elections. And his latest is about this conflict. And I've crossed paths with Luke many, many times over the years, whether it was at some press conference or some godforsaken little border crossing when either he or I were coming into or going out of a war zone, things like that. So when I saw that he was putting out dispatches from Ukraine, I reached out and I just said, how you holding up under this assault? And we had a little exchange and talked about some stuff. And I said, you know what? If you've got the time, if you can spare it, come on into the studio. We'll sit down and we'll have a little chat about what's been going on before you head back to Blighty. And so that's exactly what we did. So,
Luke Harding, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you spending some time with us today. I'm going to heap a little bit of praise on you because we don't have time to talk about your entire bibliography.
No, let's not do that.
But I know you're going to hate this, but I'm going to heap some praise on you. I think you're one of the best journalists reporting from this region and within geopolitical security and intelligence works. Your body of work speaks for itself. Check out, if you're not reading this man's reporting and his column in The Guardian, you're a fool.
No, don't.
And you should be reading his books because your books are really, really good. And I'd love to dissect them and talk about, we just don't have time. Sure. So let's talk about the war. Okay. First and foremost, it's the reason we're here. What's your impression of how this war is going?
Just to kind of go back a bit, I've been coming to Ukraine for a long time. I've been here since 2007. I was in...
Our circles have always
we have. We sort of intersected a bit. I was in Donetsk and Luhansk back in 2014 when Russia basically covertly invaded the east of the country. And I've been in Ukraine pretty solidly since late 2021 when it seemed clear to me, at least, that Russia was planning some big misadventure, and I thought an invasion was coming of some kind. I didn't quite know where and when, and so I was here in Kiev on February 24th, 2022, and I've been really tracking the vicissitudes of the war ever since, and got back a few days ago from the front line in the east. I was in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast and in Kramatorsk and Donetsk Oblast, and some things are true. Russia is going forward, not at tremendous speed, but village by village. And I spent time with an evacuation charity who are rescuing old people from the kind of front line. And of course, this is the new front line. These are places that were quiet. And what Russia is doing is using these kind of devastating assault tactics where they send in armored guys, armored columns. They send in guys on bikes and buggies. Then they send in infantry on suicide missions to sometimes clear minefields by blowing themselves up, sometimes to expose Ukrainian positions. And this strategy of, I would say, kind of rubbleifying villages, leveling them, is working, but not on a kind of macro level. It's working on a micro level. So that's one thing. And the other thing, of course, which has changed since I've started coming here is drones. I mean, the war here is a war of drones. I mean, there are elements of the First World War with trenches and whiz-bangs and explosions, and the Second World War with these crazy madcap charges by Russian armored vehicles, but also just going on an evacuation run, we were escorted by soldiers who had these bucket-shaped electronic warfare countermeasure systems on the roof to try and knock out Russian drones that were going to go and kill us. And this is the problem. We as journalists used to go to the front of the front line, and now we're about 10 clicks back, 15 clicks back, because the danger of being hit by a drone is enormous. So this is a new war. You can call it the Third World War. You can call it some other kind of war, I don't know. But it's a war which transforms military doctrine as we know it. It's a war of competition, of technology, of innovation, of mass production. And in some areas like fiber optic drones, the Russians have got the edge. In other areas, the Ukrainians are on top. So that's the battlefield. And just one other thing is Kiev and Ukrainian cities. I mean, it used to be, when I was here a year or so ago, that you would hear missiles, drones, perhaps 1 or 2 days in 7. Now you can sleep for 1 or 2 days, and the rest, your night is interrupted by anti-aircraft fire, by the rat-tat-tat and machine guns, by drones whizzing above your hotel or our hotel, which is what happened a couple of days ago. And I sometimes, maybe this sounds too trivial, Phil, but it reminds me slightly of Shrek. It's as if there's some evil enchantment that's been put here. Where by day, everything is normal. People run around. They go to McDonald's. They walk their dogs.
It's
they
bizarre.
Chat. They see their friends. They drink beer as if there were no war. But by night, it becomes infernal and apocalyptic.
And it's exhausting. And it's exhausting.
Despoiled. And it's exhausted. You run around this town, and everyone's got raccoon-like eyes, and people are grouchy. And I think some of this grouchiness, some of this exhaustion-driven grouchiness, explains some of the poor political decisions we've seen quite recently.
Yes, and I do want to talk to you about that. We try not to be too newsy here because, of course, we publish on a Sunday, and so inevitably something is going to come along and change
things are fast moving.
But I think we can talk with some, with some room to be safe before Sunday, because this protest that happened, we are filming on the 23rd, I believe it is, and this protest that happened last night was the largest protest that we have seen, and we have a visitor. That's the largest protest we've seen in the war period, I would say even since Maidan. You were there.
I was there, and it was quite interesting because everything happened super quickly, like you're watching a video and you press the kind of the fast forward or the double time button. And I have a confession to make insofar as the story or the accusation of a kind of slide or a drift towards authoritarianism against Zelensky, against his kind of grey or actually green Cardinal Andrei Yermak, that his chief of staff, who's the second most powerful person in the country, has been made for some time. And it's not exactly that I've ignored it. It's just that there's one of me, and I've been doing the front line. I've been doing the human stories, civilians, the bombing, and so on. But this story was unignorable because the Verkhovna Rada, the parliament here, voted overwhelmingly to back this bill, effectively stripping two independent anti-corruption agencies of their powers. I mean, there's been a simmering dispute between NABU, one of them, and SAPU and the SBU, the main kind of security service here, for some time.
And the general prosecutor.
And Zelensky has basically dramatically escalated this feud by I think, pushing this legislation and then last night signing the bill into law. And what was interesting was, on the one hand, it was pretty dismaying because it seemed to confirm what all the critics have been saying about Zelensky, that the longer he's in power, the more intolerant he is of dissent, and the more he begins to resemble some of his predecessors who were not Democrats, let's put it like that. But on the other hand, in this square, next to the Ivano-Frankivsk drama theatre, right under Zelensky's window, practically under his nose, you suddenly get from nowhere, as if sent by the cosmos, several thousand young activists, protesters, veterans, with these slightly rubbish but rather endearing homemade cardboard banners saying, 1241, which is the 12421, sorry, which is the legislation crossed out, with badly drawn maps of Europe, with things saying, WTF. Am I allowed to swear on your?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Or are you fucking crazy?
Oh, no, people were pissed off.
And then chants in Ukrainian of shame, of we are the power, of veto the law, and. There's nothing more alluring than young revolutionists on a summer evening with swifts circling around the sky, with dust setting, this kind of scene of virtuous anger, actually directed at Zelensky, and you think, the government probably has done a stupid thing. I mean, I swapped messages with one advisor. I still don't fully understand what's driving all this. Zelensky's tried to explain it's about getting rid of Russian connections, he says, but I don't think anyone really believes that.
No.
But then you have civil society, this kind of blossoming, engaged youth protesting and shouting and making their voices heard. And
we both lived in Moscow.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking as someone who lived in Moscow like you for 4 years, in Moscow, you would have heard within seconds the screech of paddy wagons, the crunching of batons, trunches on the heads of these beautiful youth, and they all have been dragged away.
I didn't see any Oman on the streets last night.
There was none of that, and the Zelensky people quite sensibly just let the youths get on with it.
Sure.
But I do think that if Zelensky really refuses to back down, this will turn into the biggest domestic political crisis of his presidency. And of course, the Europeans are not impressed by this. Civil society is furious, and it's clearly going to have a negative effect on morale on the front line, because what are these troops fighting for? They're fighting for a European future. They're fighting for freedom. They're fighting for transparency. They're fighting for
anti-corruption,
and a kind of decent government. And and I'm not saying this has happened, but if Zelensky wants to go down the road of Yanukovych light, Viktor Yanukovych being the kind of pro-Russian despot, corrupt guy
who was ousted
who was ousted in 2014 and stole billions, he and his cronies. If we're going in that direction, then why fight Russia, which is the sort of it's the Mordor of corruption. The whole idea is to do something better and different. So. I don't quite know who's advising Zelensky, but really, if he wants to diffuse this crisis, he needs to rethink.
I agree, but also as somebody, you are famously have been a victim of an autocratic system. You were in Putin's target, in his sights. Is Zelensky becoming Putin?
No, I think that's way too much. It's way too extreme. And even back in the bad old oligarch-inflected days in Ukraine of the late noughties, when I first started coming here, there was a different atmosphere here. The air smelt different. There was back then there was more freedom.
You could get on a train in Moscow.
Yeah,
you would get off in Kiev. And people would smile at one another.
You breathe more differently. The sort of Soviet pull
Ukraine is not
wasn't so strong. And what there was, to be serious or perhaps sort of political, there was what you might call, or political scholarly, there was contestation. In other words, there was elite disagreement, to some degree between East and West, between the Donetsk clans and the Dnipropetrovsk clans and Lviv and so on. But there was a kind of conversation, sometimes a rather clumsy one, but there was not the kind of dread feudal sort of Soviet-style monotony. You need tonalism that you got from Putin and his people, where everyone said the same thing. And so Ukraine was always more appealing, and it's blossomed. And I sort of think, I don't think Zelensky will go down this road, but if he does go down this road, pretty quickly people will start camping on the streets. And there's a kind of I was having a conversation with someone today who just said that protesting against authoritarianism and dictatorship in Ukraine in Soviet times and in the 90s and in the noughties and today, it's in our DNA. It's hardwired. Ukrainians are, by temperament, they're anarchists.
The spirit of the Cossack.
The spirit of the Cossack. They elect a leader, and then they pelt that leader with mud.
Yes.
And they elect a leader to hate the leader.
But I have noticed, and I wonder if you will agree with me on this, woe be anyone who actually then attacks the leader from outside. Look at what happened in the Oval. Yeah,
that's true. And I was one very dear Ukrainian friend of mine who said that was appalling. And he said of Zelensky, he's our fucking clown, and only we can make fun of him.
Yes,
and so definitely there was a kind of closing around Zelensky back in February. But now I think Bankova, the Ukrainian government, I think they have a problem, and I'm not sure they quite know how to fix it.
Well, I think it depends on what his intentions are. Where does he go from now, and who does he now? He now has the all the power of anti-corruption forces, which has been abused in the past.
Sure.
So we'll have to see how it goes.
I mean, the critique I hear, I'm not saying this is necessarily correct, but what I hear from quite intelligent civil society people is that Zelensky believes in anti-corruption. He's all in favor of that, apart from when it touches on his inner circle, and then he isn't.
Right.
And that's the problem, because it has to apply to everybody, have a two-tier, including people who are in a position to enrich themselves in dark times.
Yeah, it's difficult. Hey, did you hear anything on the street last night? Because I've heard this, and I want to know if you've heard this, is that part of the problem is that there's no more USAID. There's no more oversight from the Americans when it comes to civil society. And so now Zelensky there's no watchdog.
I mean, no one was mentioning USAID.
I've heard that from you.
I mean, you're right in that changed geopolitics, that Trump is not, I think we can say this without much pushback, is not a natural anti-corruption campaigner. I think he's a pro-corruption campaigner, someone who really wants to enrich himself as much as he can during his misbegotten second presidency. So that pressure is off, but it's still there from the Europeans, and they are very unhappy. We've had everyone from Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission chief, to the Germans, to the Swedes, to the French, all basically saying, well, the diplomatic phrase, of course, is serious concern. We're all seriously concerned. A lot of serious concern going around. But basically what their message boils down to is, look, if you do this, it's going to be very hard for you to join the European Union because you're going in the wrong direction. And that is a problem for Zelensky. I mean, it'd be interesting to know what they're saying in private to him, these private phone calls.
Well, obviously Trump won't care.
Trump doesn't care. But in a way, Trump is out of the game.
Yeah.
And this is the thing about if you decide you're going to swap sides and support Russia or soft support Russia, which Trump has done, and you say, we're not going to really help Ukraine, which has kind of been the message for the last 6 months. I mean, there are nuances, but essentially that's the message. Then that also gives you no leverage. But the Europeans still have leverage. I mean, joining the EU for Ukraine is a big, great, historical, shining prize, which at the moment is receding and beginning to dim.
Yeah. Well, but on the flip side of things, having just come from the front, and I want to get away from the front in a minute here, but before we do, I have to ask, do you think that they have the capacity, the Russian armed forces, to do the strategic things that they need to do? Primarily, either get themselves poised on the river and go get a rest, come back in 5 years, or even, try and get to Odessa and regain control of the northern shore of the Black Sea. And then finally, of course, there's the issue of changing Kiev to one that's more pro-Moscow. do they militarily have the capacity, in your view, having been out there, to do any of those things?
I don't think they can seize Kiev anytime soon. I think Odessa is a stretch. I think what is more realistic is to expand the existing front line in their favor.
Yeah.
So take a further chunk of Zaporizhia, press on Zaporizhia city. I was in Kramatorsk. I used to go to Konstantinovka quite frequently. There's a chain of Ukrainian fortress cities, military cities in the north of Donetsk, and it's Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Druzhkivka, and Konstantinovka. And Konstantinovka you can't visit anymore because there's too much drone activity. And so they're pushing there. Pavlograd, when I was there, city in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast was very bombed. Pokrovsk has been besieged for a while, and it looks as if the Russians are slowly breaking through. And so I think the goal of controlling all of Donetsk Oblast is coming closer. That's the key objective for Putin, is to get all of Donetsk, because Russian, Kremlin rhetoric has all been about the liberation of the suffering people of Donetsk Oblast, which of course is bullshit. But
it's all about a land bridge to Crimea.
But it's resonant for Russians.
And he could potentially claim that as a victory.
He could draw a line there if he wanted, but I don't think that's doable this year. I mean, it may be doable next year, by next summer or next autumn. I don't know, but what is doable is the scaling up of these drone attacks, and I sort of sense that part of it is about breaking the will of Ukrainians, making them turn on their government and say, "Oh, for fuck's sake, let's just stop. I don't care which flag is in the center of Maidan, whether it's Russian or Ukrainian or whatever. Just make it stop." And I think that sort of semi-defeatist sentiment is there, but I still think it's relatively small. I think most Ukrainian soldiers I talk to have been saying since 2022 that we're fighting for our land and our country and our culture and our people and our families and so on. And as one of them said to me last week, we don't have a choice. We have no other option than to keep going.
Yeah.
So I suppose the short answer is the war will carry on.
Yes, sadly, unfortunately. What do you think about what's happening in the cities? How are the Ukrainian people bearing up?
I wrote a piece for The Guardian a week or so ago after a sort of big aerial attack on Kiev, which went on for hours. It was noisy. It was a bit terrifying. Our building shook at one point. There was something fell on a house about 700 meters away from us. And I interviewed a mum with two kids. She's a designer. Her husband's a pretty well-known documentary film producer. And she had a baby last November. And so they go down to their cellar in Podil, suburb of Kiev. And because they've got young kids, they go down whenever there's an air alert, which means they go down most nights.
Right.
And they sleep on little trestle beds, and she dozes on a beanbag, and the baby is awake, and the 9-year-old sleeps. And she was basically saying she's wrung out and tired and mildly depressed and has been taking antidepressants on and off. And you look at their house or their flat, and it's full of books, and there's a sweet little kind of mezzanine floor for the 9-year-old where she's got her own little bed and her own room where she can colour. And there's a balcony with a car seat on top of a flak jacket because her husband's in the armed forces. And the kitchen is lovely, and she made me coffee, ground up the beans and made me coffee, and then had a roll up by the balcony. And, life would be perfect, well, good at least, were it not for these bombs. And just the primal fear that your loved ones, that your kids might get hurt. And I think for a long time people were pretty complacent about these air raid alerts. And now they're not. Now they hide in metro stations. Now they do go to the cellar. And we saw Lukyanovka metro station hit a few days ago with swirling dust.
One of the primary stations and markets
platform. That place is always being hit. That district, and so I sort of think, I think the fear has increased. But that doesn't mean that people want the Russians to come, because still, even though it's a while ago now, everyone remembers what happened in Bucha. Everyone remembers the thousands of people who are murdered and entombed in Mariupol by Russian remorseless shelling of residential buildings in a way that in a way that we haven't really seen since the Second World War, since Guernica or
Sarajevo.
I suppose Sarajevo, but again, not quite on the same scale
No.
because it's a smaller place.
Yeah.
Which is not to diminish the horror there, but so no one wants Russia. There is no constituency or bar a few people, a few old ladies, whatever, for Russia anymore. But nor is there a simple answer as to how to stop Russia.
No, but they also remember the centuries of history that lie between the two countries. And it's not just the cruelty of this current war. I mean, you take into account the Holodomor and all the rest of it. So thank you for your impression of that. Let's talk a couple of maybe bigger picture things. I know we're tight for time, but so one of the problems I think we have here in Ukraine is the lack of coverage. This is no longer on the front pages. Ukraine is no longer on the front pages. Your reporting has been excellent, but it's not. It seems the world may have moved on a wee bit. It hasn't completely different. What's your estimate of our industry and how we've been covering this?
I think, your assessment isn't entirely wrong, but I think it's a little bleak. I think it's phasal. And actually, when Trump shredded Zelensky in the Oval Office in February and J.D. Vance, then Ukraine has been back. I mean, for the last 6 months, I would say there's been more coverage of Ukraine perhaps than last year, because of Trump's waywardness, his unpredictability, his, apparently he's about to smash Putin over the head, but it's like the cartoon where the fist sort of moves but never actually arrives. And so I think interest in Ukraine has gone up. Certainly, it's on the Guardian website at least. It's still pretty well read. Yeah. It's still pretty well read, and I think the interest is
due in no small part to your efforts.
Well, no, I wouldn't.
Well, in your editorial staff,
much credit. I mean, it's not quite the same as 2022, of course, but the interest is still very much there. And to be positive about Zelensky, he is still very much the front man for all this, and he's a star. He's an advocate. He's a storyteller. He's a comedian still. He's someone who can do, he's very quick. So I still think that the focus is still on Ukraine to some extent, but that's not the same as giving Ukraine the tools to enable it to win this war. And I think on the positive side, there's been this incredible coalition which took Putin by surprise since 2022 in support of Ukraine. On the negative side, I'm still not sure that all European leaders, the Nordics and the Baltic countries have been better, have made the case to their population saying, look, we are actually at war with Russia. Yeah. You may not wish it to be so, but we are, and therefore we need to kind of reorientate our priorities. We need to spend more money on defense. We need to learn how to shoot. I don't know how to shoot. I don't want to shoot,
especially if the Americans are going to.
But with the Americans kind of sailing away,
right,
or saying goodbye, Europe has to be more self-reliant. So we need to revamp our military-industrial complex, and we need to have bigger armies, and that means less spending for things we like education and health and culture and so on. So these are difficult choices, and one other thought, which is that. There are two. You wanted to go macro. There are two big coalitions here. Actually, one is what's called, I don't much like the phrase, but coalition of the willing, which are the democratic states of Europe and elsewhere that are supporting Zelensky. And the problem is that they have to face electorates. They are consensual. They want debate, a conversation. They want to draft papers and to assess and so on. Okay, that's fine. But it's a bit painful. And then you have the axis of autocracy or CRINC, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, who don't have to debate anything, run by dictators who can wake up and decide to, I don't know, say if you're Kim Jong-un, dispatch 12,000 troops to fight alongside Russia, or send, another 1 million artillery shells, or provide trainloads of munitions to the Russians. And it's that old dilemma, or not dilemma, old sort of unfortunate reality that totalitarian regimes can be quite efficient. I mean, they can also be chaotic. I mean, Russia quite often is a bit of a shambling tyranny, but it is a tyranny nonetheless. And the democracy, but they're fleet-footed. And the democracies, we're still tying our shoelaces.
Yeah. Because everything has to be debated. You and I both were in Moscow in the 90s.
Yeah. Well, no, I wasn't there in the 90s. I was there in the noughties.
In the noughties,
from 2007,
right.
2011. So yeah.
You saw the kind of rise of one Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin.
Yeah.
Where do you think we are on the chronological timeline of his story? Where is he right now?
I mean, okay. So when I was there, I thought that there were two big projects going on. One of them was the kleptocracy project. In other words, Putin and the people around him were really very actively stealing as much money as they could. And by money, I mean billions and billions of dollars, that they were controlling oil, gas, natural resources, and so on. And they were enriching themselves at a furious rate. So that was the kind of private project. And then there was a sort of public project, a noisy public project to make Russia great again. And at that point, it manifested itself in neighbor wars. I mean, I was in Georgia in 2008 when Russia staged a mini invasion, as were you. And at one point, it sent its tanks towards Tbilisi, and I followed them down the highway before they turned left.
Yep. I remember seeing Georgian sappers placing charges on the industrial bridge, the last one going into Georgia.
Yeah, well, that didn't quite happen. But what was being clearly articulated was that Russia had, as Dmitry Medvedev, the then president, put it, privileged interests in its post-Soviet backyard. In other words, it could determine what security alliances countries joined, and essentially saw the countries of which used to be part of the Soviet Union as sub-sovereign, especially Ukraine. So. But so that there was the stealing and there was the kind of reawakened imperialism. But when I was in Moscow, one was more important than two. And after I got kicked out, I was deported in 2011.
Famously,
two became more important than one. And I think what we're dealing with here is Putin in a messianic late stage where he's decided that only he can do this great task of reuniting Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia into a single territorial, cultural, spiritual, very important space where it's one dominion. And it's partly restoring the kind of superpower that the Soviet Union enjoyed across Eastern and Central Europe. And it's partly a kind of return to just sheer old-fashioned 19th century imperialism, where you advance and you conquer. Well, as Putin says,
so,
Russia is where the Russian soldiers' boot is.
Yes.
So it's
there's that other one where he did with the kid, where he asked the kid, the geography expert who can do all the capitals.
Yeah.
But he says, "Where is Russia's borders?" And the kid says, "Oh, it's on the west, it's Kaliningrad, and on the far east, it's Vladivostok." And Putin leans down and says, "Russia has no borders."
Где заканчивается граница России?
Граница России заканчивается через Берингов пролив с США.
Граница России нигде не заканчивается.
It's the kind of ideology of you can call it bootism.
Yeah.
Wherever you can stick your boot is that's it. And it would be kind of darkly funny were it not for the fact that children are dying every night.
Yeah.
Women are dying. Old people are being shelled in their homes.
Forgive my gallows humor.
No, you need humor. Actually, I just wrote a piece today, which the Guardian published today, a piece that I did about stand-up comedy in Ukraine that has been flourishing amid the horror because you need to joke, including about death and about air raid sirens. And I interviewed Anton Timoshenko, who's probably after Volodymyr Zelensky the best known comedian here, stand-up comedian. And some of his jokes, he did a set he did a tour of North America, and he was doing a set in New Jersey. Some of his jokes are genuinely funny. He's sort of sitting in a bar telling Americans, saying, "I'm very grateful for the weapons you give us." but I understand you have to save some for your schools. Or he says another gag I really like is he says, Joe Biden reminds me of Ukrainians. He looks like he could die at any second, which is good. And the other one is, I perform in a bomb shelter. If my jokes are not funny, no one leaves. And it's
I love it.
And everyone kind of lands that. And okay, he polishes his routine, but I think as the war grinds on, people need distractions. They need entertainment. They need life. They need love. They need laughter. They need to get drunk.
Yeah,
maybe even take drugs. I don't know.
What bothers me is the critics of Ukraine who sit there and say, "Look at these people partying on the street while we're sending them all of our taxpayer money." What they don't understand is that you scratched beneath the surface of that, and there's a certain desperation. And I think you and I, as old war hacks, have seen this time and time again. People need to grab on to any kind of normality. It's an almost desperate clinging.
Yeah, but also Ukraine is an economy that works. I mean, I just ran into here. I interviewed the owner and founder of a new bookshop, popular new bookshop called Sense, which is now the biggest bookshop in Kiev, which he opened in the middle of the war.
It's a good bookstore.
And it's got everything, including pretty good English language section. And lots of beautiful young people, on their laptops, drinking frappuccinos and so on. And he sort of said to me, he said, look, what I'm doing is I'm creating a successful business and I'm paying tax. And this tax is then going to the Ukraine's armed forces to buy weapons to kill Russians. So people are doing patriotic stuff in their own way. And it could be fighting on the front line. It could be knitting camouflage nets. It could be building FPV drones. It could be donating cars. It could be doing memes. I mean, the Ukraine is a nation of meme makers.
They're very artistic.
Everybody is doing something, and the faraway kind of critics whose heads have been kind of turned by moronic stuff on Fox News or whatever. I mean, just ignore them, or say, as Zelensky did in February, come and see for yourself.
Yeah,
come to Kiev because it's a cool place, and to me, Kiev it's like Berlin in the Cold War. It's an interesting, even sexy, beautiful capital with infuriating guys on electric scooters and wonderful 19th century Art Nouveau architecture. But it's a place where the future of Europe will be decided.
Yes,
there is either it's autocracy and Mordor and darkness if Russia can prevail here, or actually maybe the European ideal, maybe the Enlightenment ideal, where things, strange things called values, like self-determination or freedom or democracy,
life, liberty,
or
and the pursuit
human
of
rights
happiness,
or liberty, or the things that used to animate American politics before the age of Trump. Maybe they still exist. I mean, we don't know, but there is this absolute battle, Manichean battle going on between these two ideas. Generally between Ukraine and Russia, but sometimes within Ukraine itself.
Yeah, I got two more quick questions for you. I know you got to go.
Sure.
And we're going to pull away a little bit because one of your other areas of expertise, you have this the book Collusion, Secret Meetings.
Oh, about Donald Trump and Russia.
About Donald Trump
it was
Russia.
It was a number one New York Times bestseller. And I hate to say it, Phil, but I was right.
Yeah,
I was right.
I know you were.
I was right, and I got.
I have my sources.
I got such abuse from all sorts of people about that book, Collusion. I mean, how else would one explain Trump's behavior since he came back second time around? I mean, the flattery of Russia, the refusal to do sanctions on Russia or tariffs of any kind, the abuse of Zelensky. He's a dictator, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the thing is, wherever you stand on collusion, the place you end up is, if regardless of whether he is a Russian asset, formally, however you want to describe him, you end up in a subjunctive place. He's behaving as if he were a Russian asset. What would you do differently?
Yeah,
I mean, nothing. I mean, basically, everything he's doing is what a Russian asset would do.
Well, you and I have both again, been in the business long enough that we've established contacts within certain organizations, the alphabet soup types, MI6.
But actually, those are not my sources for all this. I mean,
one of mine is.
Okay.
So that's why because all the guys that I knew who were captains, majors, lieutenant colonels back in Iraq and Afghanistan have now either risen to other heights, or they've gone into the intelligence community, the security community. And I have a source of mine who tells the story of the day that they were supposed to make that broad announcement. All 17 of the alphabet soup security guys in Washington were about to make this announcement that, hey, the Russians are infiltrating our body politic. They are messing with our election.
Yeah.
It was the day of the TMZ grab him by the pussy.
I've got what a bizarre coincidence.
My friend tells the story of being in the room when they were just about to make the announcement, and all the news agencies started breaking down. All the networks started breaking down their cameras because this isn't going to hit the air.
I mean, so
it's crazy.
I think there are a couple of things which it can explain where Trump is in relation to Russia, and they're sort of interlocking. I mean, one is an ideological overlap between the hard right Republican Party, the sort of Trump, the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, and Russia, or at least what Russia says it is. In other words, they look at Russia, and the Tucker Carlsons of this world see a white, Christian, conservative, anti-gay, anti-feminist, socially sort of illiberal society,
shirtless on a
nationalist,
horse.
sovereignist, anti-EU, and they like it.
Yes.
They think that this is a kind of kindred world. It isn't, but they believe it to be so. And then you get the extreme examples, the kind of extreme religious family from Texas who go to Russia because they think it's paradise, and they discover it's actually hell, and the husband gets sent to the front line. Yeah. So there's the ideology. Then also, I think there's the backstory, the fact that when Trump sees Zelensky, he's reminded of being impeached during his first presidential call. And also, I think Russian propaganda, which has been very effective. I mean, they really persuaded him that the Ukrainians back in 2015, 2016 conspired with Hillary to try and bring him down. In other words, it's upside down land. Mm-hmm. What really happened was the Russians hacked the hell out of the DNC, dumped and released emails to try and denigrate Hillary Clinton, and as Robert Mueller put it,
they were getting Oppo research. They were getting Oppo research from Manafort.
That they were, and launched a sort of, as Mueller put it, a sort of systematic operation to help Trump win, which was crazily successful in the end. And then lastly, there's the compromat. There's Trump's repeat visits to Moscow, stretching all the way back to 1987, where. I mean, I talked to people who said that back in the early 90s, Trump was synonymous with money laundering, that people would turn up from the post-Soviet Union with bags of cash and they would buy condominiums from him, no questions asked. And so there's the whole financial aspect, financial connection with Russia, some of which we know, some of which we don't know.
We thought that our system would go east after the Soviet Union collapsed. What really happened was that kind of kleptocracy and the criminality of late-stage Soviet Union kind of seeped west, and I think Trump was a great conduit.
Yeah, and also what you could argue, what we're seeing now is the Putinization of America.
Yes,
with America going in a rather kind of rather blatant autocratic direction, where the media, where the judiciary, where the universities are feeling a chill. Mm-hmm. And it's a chill that's for anyone who covered 1990s Russia, it's kind of reminiscent of the chill there.
And the oligarchy that's being established.
Yeah,
it's been there for a while.
And one can overstate the parallels, because America is not Russia. I mean, and there's a free media. There's a lot more kind of going on. The democracy, I think, is much more firmly rooted, of course, in the States than it was in Russia. But the trend is worrying.
Yeah. I'm going to let you go soon, I promise. Did you ever hear the story of the 2016, I believe it was St. Petersburg? Some of our colleagues in the kind of Moscow press corps attended this economic forum. And Peskov comes to the bullpen and he says, all right, all of you, the big boys, get your stuff, come with me. He goes downstairs and there is Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin sitting in a conference room. And he says to these international journalists, I don't know how I can press upon you how important this is. Go back to your people, tell them that if you don't stop NATO expansion, particularly into Ukraine, and if you don't remove the ABM, the anti-ballistic missile system, which we all know is meant to defend against us, if those two things don't happen, I am going to attack you. He says this in February of 2016. Do you know anybody who was in that meeting?
I don't, but I know.
But you remember that meeting.
I mean, I know Dmitry Peskov pretty well, and he lies about everything. And this is kind of crude KGB style, gangsterish stuff. I mean, just lastly, Phil, I would say that. I mean, Putin is not immortal. I think he sometimes thinks he's immortal, and a lot of people believe there are many doubles which he uses, because only a truly great wizard would have several versions of himself, which can be used in different circumstances. But I think we'll know that regime is over, and that Putin is dead when then Peskov vigorously asserts that he's still alive.
Yes, right, exactly.
that will be the clue that Putin is.
Last question,
is
then
gone.
you can go.
Yeah,
and it is slightly newsy. Epstein, of course, making massive, waves and just earthquakes.
Sure.
In America. GRU involvement somewhere, some way?
I don't know. I mean, I've been in much bombed Kiev, and from here, what I don't really understand is, as someone who's in the news business, is we sort of knew all this stuff, right? I mean, it seems to me that we knew about Trump's friendship with Epstein. We knew they both allegedly had an interest in young women. There's the footage of him at the sleazy parties and so on.
And this is something the GRU would love to get their hands on.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they've already got it. I mean, who knows? You don't want to overstate how competent Russian spy agencies are, nor pretend that they're not there, because they are, and they have this sort of brutal opportunistic methods that they use. So I don't understand fully why this is a scandal now, since this was known. But Epstein is one element. What is also intriguing is what Trump got up to in Russia, and there'll be plenty of videos of that as well. And I wonder if one day you and I will see them.
Let's hope so. Well, I mean, if the GRU wasn't involved previously, you better believe they are involved now.
I mean, they've got
the internet.
The Donald Trump file in Moscow will be way bigger than your office. You would need a kind of very, very, very large warehouse to contain it.
Luke, I would keep you for hours if I could and chat with you and just chin wag, as we say. So thank you for the time.
No, you're very welcome.
It's exceptionally kind of you. I highly recommend to obviously read everything in this man's bibliography and keep reading his reports. Thank you so much for reporting.
Let me shake you by the hand.
All right, brother.
Thanks a lot. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay.